Righty-ho. Got some new faces in today. Got some faces from last night. I did a webinar with Rich Friesen on psychology, and that will be posted probably in a couple of weeks that we'll have. We're also talking with Rich. He's kind of got a lot more free time this year, and he was talking about maybe we should do a series of webinars on psychology. And if you would like that, then tell us the subjects specifically you would like us to cover in a session. Morning, Adam. Adam in Bali. Alon in the Middle East. Ashutosh. I think Ashutosh in England. Daniel, Doyle, Indy, Julian Jr., Majid. Your issue should be finally sorted now, Majid. And on the subject of issues, we had so many problems. For ages, we've been thinking about moving the site to a different host and a different kind of presentation. Rich uses Teachable, but that seems clunky. I don't know if any of you have any experience with School is another one where we could have everything integrated together rather than things that we have at the moment. And there's also been an issue with YIF for people trying to sign up for the following year, but that should have been fixed this morning as well. So if you had any problems, then please just let us know through the help desk. And thank you for your patience. It's been a chaotic 10 days for Andy. Morning, John. And John in London. Righty-ho, can you see my screen? Somebody say
Yes.
yes. Yes, thank you very much. Dan says School and Kajabi are great platforms. I was always a bit wary with Kajabi because you kind of hand everything over to them, but yeah, we need to have a proper look. Right, so one of the things that we talked about last night in this presentation about psychology was the thing about trying to interpret when markets are trending, it's easy. So we've had a trending market with the dollar for the last 4 or 5 months since Trump came about. And then in the last few weeks, things have suddenly started to get a bit messy and choppy. And technically, is it a reversal? Is it not a reversal? And this is what I was saying last night, this is why robots don't ultimately work. EAs and robots, many of them don't ever work. Some of them will work for a while, but then if the market pattern starts to change, they continue to do what they've been programmed to do. The theory goes in the future that AI, it will learn from its mistakes and learn from the patterns. I have talked to some coders who think that that will not be the case. But the advantage for us as traders is that we can see things are starting to change and start to try to adapt. And so I've seen a lot of you in the forum the last few months, M2, doing great. But be careful now, because now we have to be a little bit more careful whilst all the uncertainty. And the uncertainty, as I mentioned when Mr. Trump got re-elected, he likes to throw a hand grenade in the room and see what happens. And he's been doing it on multiple fronts, every day signing executive orders. We had the farcical Q&A sessions that were going on for the people he'd nominated in front of the Senate. I think the Democrats just ended up making themselves look very silly, personally. But this is what he's been up to. And he's going out on all fronts. He's now trying to stop the Ukraine war, as he said he would. And he's sending immigrants, illegals back. And then on the financial front, as we know, what's going on with Doge and all the rest of it. And this is not usual. This is not a stable pattern that we are looking. So when we're looking for something just to continue what it's doing, this is a recipe for chaos. And on the one hand, depending on your type of trading style, then you may want more volatility. Personally, I do not. Now, this is the dollar index. And as I said earlier, from September time, we were in an uptrend. So it was fairly easy. You just buy the dollar and sell everything else. And then we had this break of the trend line a month ago. And I explained that when this first started to drop, until or unless it broke 78.6 fib, I was still of a mind we were in an uptrend. And I also mentioned that for me, even if it starts to break lower, I said the next level I will look at for an expected bounce, and it did it to the pip. Woohoo, aren't I clever? No, it just, because that's what it did before. And it's done it multiple times there. And this thing about being able to anticipate, not predict, but anticipate what's going to happen next. because all of us are really good at seeing things after the event. Say, oh, well, if you just sold it here, you'd have made a fortune. If you just bought it here. But it's been able to see in real time what's going on and also to anticipate the moves. So what I did say the other week is if the dollar starts to drop even further, then if it breaks this area, then I will consider short term to short the dollar and buy the other currencies. But my next anticipated level is here and anywhere around 105. And I also mentioned the other week that this tends to stop at the whole numbers. So just above 106 in here, 107 was where it stopped before. So this would be a logical area for me. Now, 55 is starting to roll over. So if we do get a move lower, then we could be on for a longer period of down movement. But for me at the minute, fundamentally, I'm still of a mind just that the dollar is going to be stronger rather than the other currencies at the moment. But that is mixing fundamentals in with technicals. And Ashley says Trump is trying to stop the war and the EU and UK sending more money to Ukraine. Well, that's something we're going to look at today. So keep your eye on the news. I do follow Twitter. Although, to be perfectly honest, I took it off my phone the other day. I realized I was spending 5 or 6 hours a day on my computer, and then I was spending 4 hours a day on my blooming phone. And 2.5 hours of that was Twitter. And of course, Twitter, like all social media, feeds you the things that annoy you or create a reaction in you. So I basically was getting out of bed on the morning, and the first thing I was doing was going on my phone, and the last thing at night. So I was waking up angry and I was going to bed angry. So although I still use Twitter, I use it only here on the computer, and I am deliberately trying to force myself to get away from being on the phone all the time, because as we know, it's addictive and mental health is all the rage at the minute, but I certainly have not been doing myself any favors of late. So that's just a personal thing for me. Now, as ever, I always have a look and see what's happening in all markets. I'm trying to see, are we in a risk on environment or a risk off environment? At the moment, we're in a don't really know environment. But what I did say the other week, when the S&P came back down here, the market makers would try, and Wall Street would try certainly to push it back to where it was. And that's where it's rejected again yesterday. Yesterday it was closed from Friday. But again, this is logical. You know, markets are not always logical, but this is common sense to me. Now, the US 30, I think it was US 100, actually did break higher on Thursday, Friday of last week. So we look like we're going for new highs. Need to adjust this trend line now. Maybe start thinking about trend line from there. But we're clearly in an uptrend in a bullish market at the moment. The valuations on lots of things are way over what they should be, in my opinion. I explained the other month, I've been watching the Russell. The Russell is some of the smaller companies in the USA, because there's only 7 of them are helping to prop up about 40% of the S&P. And this is being held down by the 55 EMA, which is why I use these EMAs. It's flat. It's not going anywhere. If you want to see signs of the American economy being healthy, it would be good to see smaller companies, mid-cap companies doing better than they are. And also notice to the left, why did I have this line in before? Well, hey ho, that's where it stopped previously in the past. Bit messy, but that's where it stopped to the pip and rejected middle of last week to the pip up there as well. So from here, then you're looking at the treasury notes, how much interest is the US having to pay out? Then gold. I'm going to have a good look at gold today. Gold hit all-time highs again last week, made new highs. I said when it gets to 3,000, I would anticipate there will be some profit taking. And then silver. I put out a note. I actually put this in the forum as well. I bought silver again last time. Members of my investing group, I said I was buying again at $31, and now I'm all in. I did start buying this at $16 a couple of years ago, which I shared with you, and I was buying at $22 in 2023, and I did buy again here in May 24 and again in August 24 when it was around $26. And then the other day it spiked down significantly. And again, we were breaking this major area of previous resistance. And this is quite probably manipulation. And I mentioned this many times before. The Hunt brothers in America in the 50s tried to collar the silver market. JP Morgan and the big banks, Citibank, etc., Bank of America, are heavily active in this, but not with the real metal. They are paper trading it, they are trading derivatives, and they do not want this to keep going higher. But if we continue with the uncertainty that we have at the moment, their wish may not come true. Now, this was Ashley mentioned about Trump. I mean, this was for me as a European, as an English, I think this is hilarious. So this is the guy who's the Hunsen, I think he's, what was he called? Husgen. So he's the chair of the Munich Security Council meeting, and they've invited JD Vance over. So this is the introduction to the speech by Vance. And Vance basically just sat there and stood there and slaughtered them. He called them out on their wokeness. He called them out on their attempts to mute free speech, which they are doing. The German leader the other day had said, "Oh, we're much in favour of free speech, but we're not in favour of Elon Musk saying things that we don't agree with," is basically what he was saying. You have people in the UK, there's a poor lady, 51, never been in bother in her life, made a vile comment on Facebook after 3 sweet little girls were murdered by an immigrant. The Starmer's mob tried to cover it up. This lady, within a week, was in jail for 3 years for something she said on Facebook. And the post was taken down within 3 hours. It was an emotional response to something that had gone on. And yet there are literally rapists in the UK who are not going to jail because they've come from another culture and they didn't realize the rules that you're not allowed to rape people. So if you watch this, I personally believe that what Vance said is so true. And he did this presentation to stunned silence. There were all these Muppets from the EU are sat there in the crowd, and you could hear a pin drop. All of them. All of them. So I thought that was hilarious. And then to close the conference, this is the aforementioned Mr. Husken. And Mr. Husken actually had to stop his speech because he was in tears. And he wasn't in tears because of the war in Ukraine or anything else. He was in tears because of what Vance had said. Oh, dear God. Then our leader, Herr Starmer in the UK, because Trump is now trying to sort out the Ukrainian situation, which he said he was, Starmer is going to put boots on the ground. He's going to send troops, and he thinks that we should allow Ukraine to join NATO. And again, for not reading the room and not understanding the world, this is something I have shown you before. This is a presentation from Mike Maloney in 2015, when he explained how Russia felt threatened by the advance after the demise of the USSR. This was the map in the 90s. This was the map at the end of the Second World War, after the Allies had carved up Europe, deciding who was getting what. And then by the end of the period in today, which was 2015, Russia were being pushed further and further back. And what they were concerned about is NATO was starting to put long-range nuclear missiles, 10 missiles that could be fired at once, each of which had a nuclear warhead on it that was 10 times the strength of the Japanese nuclear bombs, Hiroshima, 10 times 12, were going to be based in Turkey and Romania. At which point, Putin, understandably, you might say, was more than a little concerned. But this is a presentation by Matt Malone. This is only 7 minutes long. You really ought to watch this to understand some of what's been going on. There is a longer presentation by an American professor that I've shared with you in the past that is an hour long. But this is a really good summary of what was going on, meetings that had been held between America and Russia, where Putin had said, what do you not understand? You can't keep doing this. I'm not justifying what he did. I'm just simply saying that we are fed what the mainstream media are trying to feed us all the time. And again, this was an update from Maloney in 2022, and it's as relevant today as it was then. And he's talking about how the media manipulate it. In the West, we're all led to believe that Ukraine's winning, woohoo, and Russia is on the back foot and everything's collapsing and everything's great. On the Russian side, of course, and the alternate press are saying completely the opposite. And ultimately, we don't know. We only know what our lords and masters are telling us. And he also shares in here, shares a couple of links. And this is one to the Professor Mearsheimer's presentation I just mentioned. So there's a link in here. And then there's another link in here, which is what Mike Maloney is saying. Look, watch this video every day. It makes you realize how inconsequential we are individually and even as a tribe, the whole planet, in the scheme of things. And so this is a very thoughtful, positive message that's being given. And when you click the link in the video, YouTube, oh, it's gone. YouTube have taken it down because it's violent or graphic. So I had to dig around and I thought, well, hang on, what the hell is this video saying? And I found it. So if I share this in the recording when we post it, this is what Carl Sagan's pointing out. This is Earth in the whole scheme of things. And he's just basically saying about mankind and the folly of it all, and that we ultimately should be looking for peace and harmony and everything else. And YouTube have banned it as harmful content. So check that out as well. But this is an example about the war. I have no idea, more idea than anybody else. I suspect that it's not going as well for Ukraine as they've tried to make out, but that's me, probably my cynicism with everything that goes on. But ultimately, we do not know what is going on. But Trump came in and he said that he would stop it. He said initially within 24 hours. Obviously, that's taken a little bit longer. Now he's talking about that Ukraine are going to have to give up some land. Well, that was always going to be the case. But then let's see what happens. The EU are obviously a little bit miffed because they're not even included in the speech at the moment, the talk, by all accounts. Another thing then, this was another thing that I got the other day. If you really want to understand the whole way that the financial world works, this is the 3-hour long video, and to be honest, I haven't finished it yet, but really fascinating. And I do know quite a bit about what they're talking about, but this is something that if you want to understand fully how the world works, then you really ought to watch that. This is a shorter, more easy to digest presentation on the history of money that I've shared with you before. And this is how fractional banking came about, and this is about the importance of gold. And then the other thing I've mentioned to you before, this is about the creature from Jekyll Island. This is how the Federal Reserve was created. And the Federal Reserve is a private bank, and it is uncontrolled. It creates money out of thin air and then lends it to the government and then charges interest on it, which is insane. And there's a really good, I'll share this link with you. It's from Amazon UK. In fact, I may have to actually copy and paste this review, but there's a review in here by a guy, and I don't know who he is, but he really, really goes into explains. If you don't want to read the full 600-page book and pay 30 bucks for it, he goes through here chronologically how the Federal Reserve came about, and it's a really, really good summary. So I'll see if I can get permission to reuse that or get the link for you so everybody can see it. And then there is an audio version of it as well. So if you don't want to sit through it, apparently this is about an hour long, and it is a preview of the book. So apparently that is worth listening to as well. If anybody can find cheaper copies, let us know. So what set me thinking about gold again the other day is one of my private students, or it might have been Ashley's actually. I think it might have been David. Was it you, David? David O? Had done we asked them to do a study on each of the major economies and the currencies. And somebody came up and did a study on, or it might have been Marcel actually, but he did a study on the UK economy. And I hadn't looked at this in ages. And this is the thing. I mean, I do this for a living and I'm fairly up to date on what's happening everywhere else. But what the heck's this with gold in the UK? They don't have any gold. They don't process gold as far as I'm aware. So how the heck is gold such an important export for the UK? Well, the next part of the puzzle I did understand, but I didn't realize the implications of it for GDP. The other thing to note from this is that despite the EU and the UK being separated because of Brexit, Germany is still one of the top trading partners of the UK, as is Netherlands, Ireland, France, Belgium, Spain, etc. The biggest trading partner is USA. And then China is also important as well as. So this is a really good website if you want to understand more about what each country is doing and where they export things to, etc. And then you have Germany, and Germany is in decline, and Germany has been in a recession for the last year or two, and things are not getting better. And I read a report the other day, and it was talking about, and this is another thing about the EU, they strangle all new ideas with legislation and rules. And one of the things that Vance was talking about was AI and how America was kind of positively approaching this. Whereas the UK, for example, Starmer, the clown, didn't invite Elon Musk to a discussion about AI the other week. And he was one of the founders of the project in America. And so the EU are trying to strangle everything, whilst America is going full on for AI. And the report I was reading about Germany was saying the German economy, as we know, was built on cheap energy from Russia. And that's been the case for many years. And obviously, they've been punished and are suffering at the moment because of the situation in Russia, although they still do get some fuel from Russia. But the point that the article was making, that in effect, Germany's economy has stagnated because they were always of the opinion that they were the best. And let's face it, their cars were high quality, the Porsches, the Audis, the BMWs, etc. And the world worked that they could sell as much as they were producing. And then suddenly we now have a scenario where they were slow to adopt electric vehicles. They tried to do it the typical EU way of bullying everybody into getting it. And like the UK, supposedly still in the UK, you won't be able to buy a petrol car after 2030. So they tried to bully everybody. And in the meantime, China and Tesla have been producing these things. And now China, this situation is flipping around for Germany. Germany previously was shipping a lot of cars to China. China is now shipping a lot of cars to Europe. And somebody in here mentioned the other week, there's a Chinese car manufacturer, BYD, I think it's called. And I was looking at one the other day. And to be honest, I'm still petrol head, and I'm going to buy myself another midlife crisis sports car soon. But these new Chinese cars do look quite good. In fact, they look very good. And I think one of them was giving a 7-year warranty on the engine. Whereas if a Tesla battery goes, it's 20 grand apparently for a new battery. So innovation and changes have been going on around Germany, and Germany, as a result of which, is stagnating, is the impression that the article gives, and the impression I have. Now, I don't know if Marcel's with us today, or if we've got any other German members, but if you think I'm wrong, anybody, if you think I'm wrong, say so, stick it in the chat box. Okay, I'm not into community groups, to be honest, Dan. They take a lot of moderation and looking after. So, going back to this screen, why the heck is gold such a major export for the UK? And could there be trouble ahead for the UK in terms of GDP? Because there is a run on physical gold at the moment around the world. And what generally happens in the gold and silver market is that, and I mentioned earlier about the manipulation, a lot of it's paper trading, and nobody actually takes physical possession of the gold at the end of the trade. And this is how the JP Morgans, etc., have made billions from shorting it. Mentioned before, JP Morgan, some of their traders were accused of racketeering last year and were found guilty of a minor charge, I believe it was. So they blatantly manipulate the market. But now folks are asking for the physical possession of gold. On top of which, Trump is also moving a lot of gold back to the USA, which is also beginning to cause questions. Now, these people here, I follow these people on Substack. This guy is free, and I don't want to subscribe to too many things because my inbox is just overpowered. But this guy's called David Jensen. He's very knowledgeable on gold, and I certainly find that the free version is more than adequate. I do subscribe to Alistair McLeod, a finance Substack. He's very, very knowledgeable. He's been in this market for 50 odd years, and he also ties it in with politics as well. And he's very much of a mind that gold is money and everything else is just pieces of paper, which is true. And so these two are worth looking at. And then here, the Bubble Report, another one. I think I'm on a freebie with this. He sends out a lot of information. A lot with Substack is to start with, you get lots of freebies. And then once you realize the value of somebody, then they want you to start to upgrade and pay, which is fair enough. But what he's talking about here, again, I I don't think I'll try to share some of these articles. If not, you might have to just join Substack for free and then go looking for the bubble report. What you can access, of course, is Yahoo Finance. And what the US is talking about at the moment is revaluing their gold reserves. So I remember I told you in 1933, the US government confiscated gold from the public. And at the time, I think they paid $20 an ounce. Forced sale, go to jail if you don't hand your gold over. And then they revalued it $35 an ounce. Well, apparently, the American Treasury, it's still only valued at, is it $42 an ounce, when today it's at 2,900. So Trump, by the looks of it, has a cunning plan to revalue the gold reserves to change the balance sheet. And so instead of everything being on a negative, it would. But 750 billion is not a massive amount against their $36 trillion debt, nearly 37. And there is another interesting point at the end of this article. If he decides to sell it, that could bring the price of gold down. What next? Oh, Ron Paul. I do like Ron Paul. Ron Paul, I think he's an independent senator in the US, and he's been banging on about this for years. And a lot of what Doge are doing at the moment, Ron Paul has been talking about for years as well. He's saying we should audit it, which makes sense because he's saying nobody actually knows if there is any gold left in the Federal Reserve. Germany requested all its gold back from the Federal Reserve in 2012, and it took 8 years for them to take possession. So he's going to introduce a new bill next year to make it so somebody has to go in and count all the bars, which he said if there's no question about the gold being there, you think they would be anxious to prove it. But he's been making this pitch apparently since the 1980s. Again, McLeod and geopolitical update talking about Trump and the implications. So you really ought to have a read of some of these things if you have any interest in money. If you have any interest in protecting your wealth, I have 25% of my assets tied up in gold, physical gold. And I explained at the start of the year that I had converted all my excess pounds and euros into gold and to the US dollar. And I am quite content with that. And ultimately, if everything turns to the nasty stuff, gold is the ultimate safe haven. If you've not got much money, then the focus is, well, the focus as always is to hold on to what you've got, but try to make money, which is what we obviously are doing as traders. This is talking here about the manipulation, how Goldman Sachs and one of their subdivisions have been doing it for years. And once again, I can share, this is on Substack as well. So have a look at Substack. It's worth reading. Have a look for some of these gold folks and you have a better understanding about what's going on. And the bubble report, he was explaining about silver. So I just showed you on a chart how the spike back down came about. But this has happened on multiple occasions in this area. And this is the the funds and potentially the bullion banks fighting back because they are net short. So lots going on. Gold is the ultimate safe haven. China has been buying a lot. And they also announced in February that now they're allowing their insurance companies to hold some gold on their balance sheet as well as. Now, this is an article about Iceland. In 2008, I think, when everybody else started to print money, Iceland basically went bust. Bankers did go to jail, and the people forced to change. And by 2012, they had recovered. But this was a brutal way to respond to a financial crisis, but different to what everybody else does is print more cash out of thin air. Now, the other alternative for where to put money if you are wanting a safe haven, as you know, Bitcoin is one of the asset classes that I am in, and probably 55% of my crypto holdings are in Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is legitimate in the eyes of the American government by the fact that the SEC and the CBDC gave permission for the ETFs. But these are the current holdings. And Trump did talk before the election about creating a sovereign wealth fund. And one of the hints was crypto. And if that was crypto, that would be Bitcoin, would be the primary one you would think. Although his sons are actively buying Ethereum at the moment. So clue, if the Trump family are making money out of crypto at the moment, then maybe that's something else you ought to consider. Now, I can't remember why I put this page up. um, Pierre has posted his analysis, and Tienis did his on Sunday. And fundamentals, Ashley's updated this a little, so you can go in here and see what the current state of play is in there. And there's also a mini fundamental course in here. And this is just trying to understand a little bit more about the things I'm sharing with you now, looking in the background, trying to guesstimate, gauge where we think currencies are going next, where stocks are going next, where gold is going next, and etc. and crypto is going next. So understand, the more you understand about how the financial world works, the better prepared you are to be a trader and an investor. And I think that's almost it for me. I think I told Ashley I would need up to 40 minutes, so he's going to be panicking now. But also, obviously, keep your eye on what Trump's doing, because he has the ability to rock the markets on a daily basis. What was this? Another one? Again, this one's tracking what Trump's getting up to. Any questions? Let's have a sip of my tea and see any comments. Dan says BYD are becoming popular in Australia. Yeah, I saw a sporty version of one the other week, and I think I mentioned in here, it looked that nice. I actually crossed the road, a busy road, to go have a look at the thing, and I'd never heard of it before. It did look quite interesting. Circle.so. It's a great. Oh, great. Okay. Trump is looking to circle. School. Just trying to catch up on the comments, and everything moved. Ziggy says, excellent info, thanks. Post lots of things like this, Ziggy, in the blog. If you go into the home page and you scroll down, it's slow. Why is my website loading slowly? Well, because you've got 50 windows open as ever, Mark. If you go into my investing corner, Ziggy, and click on read more, there's lots of things in here when I talked about why I'm still bullish on Bitcoin. And the thing at the minute is Bitcoin and uranium, which are things, and miners, which I have made good money on in the last few years, are currently in the doldrums or going nowhere. For me, this is the time to be thinking about buying. And in here as well, it goes back years, but Joe talks about joining the dots. And there's another, I think, where's the other one gone? And then in my other blog, this one, I published the third recording the other week, I think it was, of here. So if you're new or you want to understand the 5 reasons more, we're going to add this into the start here section. But this, I'll put it in the chat box now. This presentation here is how I use 5 reasons all the time before placing a trade. So this is one that's Tickmill sponsored. And on the subject of Tickmill, we have now included them as a recommended broker. We've been with Global Prime for years. I have moved away from Global Prime. Nothing personal against the company, but because I am a non-Australian, I am supposed to have my money in Vanuatu. And I'm sorry, but I am not sending large amounts of money to Vanuatu. I couldn't even find it on a map. Tickmill and has a similar spreads. They're both as fast, they're both reliable. Tickmill is regulated by the FCA in the UK, which is the highest level of cover. And then if you're a non-UK client, you can be insured with Lloyd's between 20 grand and $1 million, depending on your country. So I always prefer to be with regulated brokers. I found this lot to be very good. I have been using their using account. Now, because of the vagaries again of the EU, if you're in Spain, France, or like me in Portugal, you may not be able to open an account. You may, of course, have a company somewhere else that could open an account, or you could look into various options, shall we say. But yeah, with Global Prime for Aussies, yes, I still recommend Global Prime for Aussies, but not for anybody else these days. Right, Ashley.
Mark, I
You'll
had
be
a question for you.
Oh, go on.
It's regarding the pound. So, it's in a place where we were waiting for this short for months now at 126.70. Well, it was at 127. Now it's approaching slowly in there. What do you think about it? I
Let's
mean,
have a
yes, I want to short it, but it's coming in slowly, so it looks a bit tricky.
mm,
And you have tomorrow's CPI news for the pound. in the morning.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, what would you recommend?
mm. Um, Good question. To be perfectly honest, I haven't looked at it. My wife's away at the moment, and I've been that busy with things. I didn't even look yesterday. Um, Clearly, the CPI news is going to be really important. So I think
Yes.
if it stays where it is, I wouldn't even put a forward ordering on this. If this drops today anywhere down here, then I would put a forward order in before CPI news, and I would put
Yeah.
the stop up here.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. If it drops a bit more, we
Yeah,
we can meet the daily range. So at the moment, it looks too close, and it does 110.
yeah,
So it could even spike a bit further. I guess if it comes a little higher and does the daily range, then maybe we can get a good stop if it comes like near 127,
yeah.
which
Well,
would be a good
the
idea.
other thing, of course, to bear in mind, because the American market was closed yesterday, I would wait until New York anyway
Yeah.
with everything this morning and just see what happens. Because with things happening, many things happen on a weekend, as we know, and with Trump being so active, you just don't know what's going to happen today. So I would wait until New York comes because it's quite possible that this could go further and then fake and then drop again. So yeah, it's like we said at the beginning. The issue at the minute, this is clearly a major line in the sand. If this was to break today, that would be a 50 pip move. The average is 74, so 70 odd would take it down here to yeah. I would wait and see what
I
happens.
did see a head and shoulder on that dollar index there, which looks like it's broken out, isn't it? Um,
This one or that one?
no, the other one you just pointed out. Head, left shoulder on the left down,
Yeah.
and then right shoulder, and then breakout.
Or
Um,
that could be the
that,
neckline.
yeah, it's a bit subjective, isn't
Hmm.
it?
Well, it's very subjective, but that's
Mm,
the point again is that if it's going up, we buy. If it's going down, we sell. If we don't know, we have to be ultra careful. I
yeah,
mean, what I've done of late, the last few weeks, I've made money out of the cross pairs. So EURCAD looks interesting to me today. Stop wise, we could go in here, although really probably have to go. Oh, that's getting too far. That's a shame. Oh no, 75. Below the whole number, below the 78.6, below the trend line. The trend line needs to be adjusted, really. Um, that would interest me. I say I haven't, to be perfectly honest, I haven't looked at anything
no, that's
Forex
fine. It's
wise.
one of the pairs I have, so I'll
But
go with it
yeah,
anyway.
that one's definitely of interest. Bitcoin, I mean, Bitcoin is very similar to what I just showed on something else. I can't remember what it was now, but it's just bobbling along on the 55 EMA at the moment. So it's had the last 2 weeks of trying and trying and trying to break this 55. But we know that when it's been coming down anywhere around 92, 92 and a half, that the buyers have been sat waiting. So for something like this, if you're thinking of buying some Bitcoin, then this would be the area to be thinking of. Here, it's not going anywhere really, unless you're cost averaging in. Those of us who are in Bitcoin already are obviously hoping it's going to set off again. And then if it sets off again, where's it probably going to run out of steam unless something happens? And this is why the fundamental side of things for folks is so important. If Trump does something or something kicks off, anything extraordinary, then that's what this needs to give it the momentum to go through. At the minute, the buyers and sellers are in equilibrium. Everybody's getting a bit bored with it. And I just mentioned earlier, uranium's the same. Those of us in the investing group last year made a lot of money out of uranium. Now it's way down, but the demand has not changed for uranium. Now, settlement in Russia may mean that more uranium comes into the market later in the year, but in many ways, yeah. I mean, the Euro USD, I was looking at this at the weekend. The Euro USD is still for me way up here, although again, you have an interim area in here. But anyway, you go through your Forex setups.
Yeah, no worries.
Any other questions? Julian says China has just responded to Trump by reducing exports of rare earths and tungsten. Yeah, correct. So, I mean, that's the big thing that's really going to cause ructions is the tariffs. Depending on what happens and whether it all calms down, we know that he did it as a poker player with Mexico and Canada, and both of those countries could not afford to lose their export market to America because it's massive. China, on the other hand, is quite happy to stand up to them for political reasons as well as financial. and they wouldn't be in a rush to lose face either. So this next month, I think, is going to tell us what's going to really happen with the tariffs. But in the meantime, play safe, you know, be as ultra cautious. I am only taking A star trades at the moment. Anything, the moral of all of this is if in doubt, walk, just leave it. And Adam says, with gold and silver prices at the all-time highs, are some mining stocks lagging? Yes. Yes, Adam, some of the mining stocks are lagging. And it means that basically the gold and silver in the ground is currently being sold at a discount. Having said that, a lot of the miners have bounced quickly of late. So again, I am watching. And I think AG and First Majestic are things I have bought a little of in recent weeks. And what else have we got in questions, comments? Right, I think that's it for questions and comments. Anybody's got any more, stick them in the box. We can always try answer at the end, or I might type a reply in the box as well as. And of course, the replays of this will be in the blogs. Ashley's Forex one will be done straight away today. That's the more important one in terms of speed, and mine will be around in the morning.